Hello everyone, and welcome to my spicy hot take for the month of June. Well, I guess this one is kind of really old to talk about, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that this conversation has been talked to death, but you know what? I haven't gotten a chance to take a crack at it. So, this was something that I had written back in August 9th of 2015. And I think this was maybe a couple of years after I had actually finished the marathon that I did of How I Met Your Mother. So my relationship to that show is patchy. So I actually started watching the first couple of episodes with my friend Josh Darby when I was in college. It was a new show, it had just come on, and he had asked me, hey, this thing is happening, I've seen commercials for it, it looks really fun. Would you like to watch it with me? I hear Neil Patrick Harris is supposed to be in it, and I was like, okay. Because one of the things about me is I don't usually take up new things very often unless it's my idea. I've just kind of always been that way. I think this has something to do with the fact that there was one girlfriend that I had when I was growing up who was constantly like, let's watch this movie and this movie and this movie, and they were all bad. Like, they were all terrible. And not like fun terrible, like genuinely mind-rottingly stupid. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not a fan. So I think it just sort of developed into this, nah, I'm good, bro, attitude. But, you know, I'm glad that I said yes. And we watched it, and it really was a lot of fun. Now, because I think it was the last year before we graduated, I was only able to watch a couple of the show episodes with him before, life and everything else got in my way, and it just got too crazy to continue. So I wasn't able to watch How I Met Your Mother until years later, when it was finally put on Netflix. And I had heard, via the grapevine on Facebook that the ending was terrible. That it's one of the worst things to have happened. I remember everybody making posts on Facebook the night of the finale, and they were like, that was the most disappointing shit I have ever witnessed. And I was like, okay, brace myself for that then. So I messaged Darby years later after it had been put on Netflix, and I was like, hey, I'm about to start from the beginning and go all the way to the end of How I Met Your Mother. And of course he's like, do you know what happens? And I'm like, no, I don't know anything. And he's like, okay, just to warn you, it is so disappointing. And I'm like, all right. So I watched it, and I went all the way to the end, and yeah, that was a disappointing end to an otherwise great series. And I say great series knowing that in 2026 that it is completely flawed. It's a sitcom, of course it is. They can't all be MASH. You know what I mean? And I understand that, like, MASH has, like, its ups and downs flaws as well, because it was made during a time, it was the 70s. We're never perfect in our media. We can get nearly perfect, but not completely perfect. So, that being what it is, on reflection, of course, people have talked ad nauseum about this online. They've talked about, the transphobia, the homophobia, Ted being kind of a pick-me, Ted, lots of stuff about Ted, Marshall actually secretly being, the nice guy, but, nice guys are actually shitty men, actually. And so on and so forth, actually Barney's character gets the least amount of criticism, I think, because he is always exactly who he is in in that show. So, that being said, I still want to talk about Robin versus Tracy. So I'm going to start off with what I had written back in 2015. So I had said there has been many a debate about the series finale of How I Met Your Mother, in which we discover that the mother, Tracy, has been dead for 6 years, and Ted has decided that the time has come to get back out there into the dating field, and he chooses to return to his over a decade old flame, Robin. Now, to some, this ending was perfect because there is a continuing thread throughout the whole series that Ted is madly in love with Robin, and therefore they should get together in the end because many years have passed and the time has come to try again. And then there are others, including myself, who feel that the original ending was a sad cop-out and spit in the face of every character development we see throughout the course of the show. But I would like to paint a clearer picture for those out there who still think that the original ending was the best ending. First of all, we'll take a look at Tracy, the mother. Throughout the course of this show, we are constantly reminded by Ted that his search for true love is the one thing that motivates him, and when he drops subtle hints about how fantastic the future mother is, we can't help but get excited. That makes the moment we actually get to meet her even more special, when we discover that she is just as quirky and endearing as Ted is. Everything about her personality falls into place with Ted so completely that I would go so far as to say that their relationship makes it up there with Gomez and Morticia Addams. Marshall and Lily also have a ranking in that category as well, don't worry. The only downside, we don't really get to see a whole fleshed out character because we spend so little time with her before the show wraps up. But that little bit of information is enough to know that this woman is clearly the right choice. I'm going to pause for a second and go through this a little bit. 2026 me would probably say that upon reflection that they don't necessarily have a Gomez and Morticia Addams dynamic, but they do have a dynamic that I appreciate, because it's very clear that there is chemistry there for the actors and the characters. And there was also some discourse that folks were just kind of chatting about that I've picked up in the years since I wrote this, where the main criticism of Tracy is that they say she's kind of a manic pixie dream girl. You know, she ticks all of, his boxes and all this stuff. You could say Tracy is a flavor of Manic Pixie Dream Girl, just because, like she's quirky and stuff like that, but, Manic Pixie Dream Girls generally have trauma, and that is usually why people call them Manic Pixie Dream Girls, because they're quote-unquote quirky. Tracy is quirky, and yes, she probably has a touch of autism. Absolutely. So yes, a flavor of Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but I wouldn't say in the typical way that folks think about Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which usually comes with a lot of baggage. So yes and no. And the other reason that sort of bothered me about that comparison with Tracy and Manic Pixie Dream Girl is because it's a TV show, so there is going to be an element of fantasticalness that's attached to this. Yes, Ted could have gotten with Victoria or Stella or any of these, other women that are, quote unquote good for him, but also their own people. I don't know. It's always just been a little bit odd to me that people did not want an end cap. Tracy's too perfect. Tracy's a manic pixie dream girl. Blah blah blah. All this other stuff, and it's just like, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's a sitcom. It's a rom-com in a way. There's always going to be an element of suspend your disbelief that goes on in those stories. People don't watch Bridgerton for its historical accuracy. You know what I mean? Like, that is not the reason that people engage with that show. So it's a little weird to me that people are like, yes, How I Met Your Mother, a sitcom from the early aughts. I'm looking for realism in this show that has a laugh track. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm totally fine that Tracy is quirky and that she is basically Ted, but female, But she also isn't at the same time. She teases Ted, and has other stuff that's like bounced off of him. Like, Ted can't play a guitar. He's not musically talented. He's got a different typetism. He has hyper focuses, but anyway. So, that doesn't bother me at all. That she's like that. So I think that that's kind of a dumb take, if I'm being really honest. Now we're moving along, and we're going to go into the second half of what I wrote. Now let's discuss Robin, a woman who is driven by her career. She's not willing to commit or settle down with anyone. She is a child-free woman, where Ted is not a child-free man. That in itself presents a huge problem. She is not willing to return Ted's feelings for her in later seasons, yet when something goes wrong, he is the first person she turns to. This is a powerful manipulation tactic. That's not to say that Robin does those things on purpose, but he is essentially her comfort zone that requires little effort on her part. However, when Ted finally finds the girl of his dreams, all of Robin's comfort is snatched away from her, and she never deals with it the way a grown woman should. She realizes that she has taken Ted for granted all those years, and pretty much states in the final Halloween party scene that she can't stand to see him in love with someone else. And that is what makes her a thoroughly and truly unlikable character. Friends are supposed to be happy when they see that their friends are wildly happy with the partner that they are with, not be bitter and resentful because their favorite toy was taken away. I realize that that is a human emotion that occurs every day, but she is one of the main characters that we are supposed to like, and painting her in that light turns her likability sour. I stand by this still in 2026. As a matter of fact, there was a point where I was going to make an entire compilation of just Robin being selfish, and then I realized that would take up so much of my time. Like if I had that kind of time, I would probably do it, but it would be so much. And I started discussing it, from the very beginning, from season 1. You can see what kind of person she is. Now, you could say that the writers did this to Robin's character as a way to slight women that are career-driven. I've seen some talk, not for Robin specifically, but other characters that, are women in power. Cruella de Vil, for example. I saw someone, they had taken a screenshot from the live action where she's telling Anita, you have talent, don't squander it by getting married. You know what I mean? And they're like, why would they give this line to a villain? And someone had replied and said they had to make someone who is a career woman saying, you don't have to get married, that you have talent, and that it's okay to focus on yourself and your career, that this is a stance that only like a woman who wants to murder puppies would have. And, you know, when did this come out? Like 2007, somewhere around there. I mean, I can see that would be like the same kind of writing tactic that they would use on Robin, but this is a TV show where character development happens, you know, and she never once strays from that goal. Not that that's not a bad thing, because there's plenty of women that are like super driven and all that, but Ted flat out tells her in the very beginning, this is what I'm after. And she's like, that's great, that's not me. And instead of just kind of taking that, she sticks around. She stays. And then they date. And then they break up. And yes, we could have a long conversation about how Ted is also toxic. You know, why didn't he do the thing where he actually moved away? All this kind of stuff. We can have those conversations to where it's going to come out to they're both wrong. You know, it's just that for this particular conversation, I just want people to really understand why Robin is not a good fit for Ted. This kind of stuff happens all the time in real life. You have one person who says, I do not want children. And then the other person will try to convince them that yes, they actually do want children. And then that person, because they love them, will eventually cave. And then they will have kids with that person, and they're miserable because it's not something that they actually wanted. And then the children suffer because it's clear that the marriage and the relationship are strained because somebody pressured the other person to have kids. The same thing can be said for poly situations. One person is like, I want to be open, you know, I want this to be, you know, something that we can explore. And one person might be like, I'm sorry, I'm monogamous. And then one or the other person will push them to try to live one lifestyle or the other, and it just doesn't work. And they end up parting ways, or once again, the relationship gets strained, drama happens, and then people's feelings get hurt. This lack of communication, inability to be like, I need to let go. That's really what it is that folks are really terrible at letting go. Art is a reflection of life, is a reflection of art. And sometimes I don't think that we look at a piece of media, because media literacy is dead, right? So we don't look at a piece of media and analyze it and go, oh, I can see why this relationship isn't working. It isn't working because of X, Y, and Z factors. They need to break up, or they need to go their separate ways. It would be healthier for them in the long run. Oh, wait, this is kind of reflecting things that is happening in my own life. Maybe I need to sit and think about that for a second. It's not something that I think that enough people actually do with stuff like this. They jump to conclusions like, oh, no, it's fine that they're together because time has passed and he had his kids and blah, blah, blah. It just diminishes the experience and really the life of the other woman. And what the whole point of the show was supposed to be in the first place. It cheapens it. And that's why people, I think, were so upset. And rightly so. Like, actually rightly so. Somebody years ago, when they were talking about the end of this series, had mentioned that something that the writers did not take into account, and it's the same thing that happened with Game of Thrones, and I'll stick a small pin in that and come back to it, was that when you are in the writer's room, they have a tendency to go, this is the end goal for the show. Now, the writers for How I Met Your Mother, went essentially on record to say that having Robin be Endgame was always the goal. And it's like, well, then why didn't you write an entire show about him, finding the perfect woman if that was always going to be the goal and it wasn't Robin? Like, that doesn't make any sense. The other part of it is this person said, when you are writing, the characters will shift and move around, not to the needs of narrative, but just the natural writing process that just tends to happen in any writing space. But when you try to force the characters to fit the mold that you set out 7 years ago, because the show ran for a while, that is not good writing. And that is why we got the ending that we did, because they kept on trying to shove everything, back into the mold that they had set out back in like 07, 08. And that's just not realistic. And I fully agree with that. Any writers out there will know that sometimes the story leads you around. And you need to let that natural process take its shape, because clearly that is the tale that wants to be told. When you try to like shoehorn it, that's when it starts getting stupid, for lack of a better word. And just real quick to unpin the Game of Thrones thing, the same thing happened with them. Now, the difference with Game of Thrones is that they had a literal script to go off of. It's called the books. And they just decided not to do that. They wanted to go off script. They wanted to write their own little fan fictions. They wanted to traipse and all this other stuff. But there's many other problems with the Game of Thrones series, from the exploitation of women's bodies to the odd choices that they made in the writing room specifically for fan service. And I understand that fan service has been a thing that has been going on since arguably the dawn of time. Writing and storytelling has begun, but it's gotten out of hand at this point, and that's thanks to the internet, because we have so much power and control that the writers feel that they have to please us or we will log off, and that's just stupid. Like, write the piece that you're going to write and let it stand on its own. There's nothing necessarily wrong with throwing in fan service, but if it does a disservice to the narrative as a whole, there's no reason to do it. But anyway, thank you for indulging my small Game of Thrones rant. But yes, I understand that this conversation could be a lot lengthier, a lot more involved, and we could actually go on and on and on about Robin and Ted, and even throw in like Marshall and Lily, and and all the stuff. We could absolutely do that, but I wanted to keep it as succinct as possible. I still stand by these stances. Tracy didn't get enough time. I really like her as a character, and I think that for me personally, Robin is one of my least favorite characters in media, because of how narcissistic and selfish and unhealed she is. That's really it at the end of the day. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for indulging me in this extremely old topic. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, hello. This was a small project that I had over on my Patreon, and I moved it over here because I have different hot takes, Sailor Moon hot takes, over on my Patreon. So if that is something you are interested in checking out, feel free. It's on my $2 tier. I also have a Ko-fi if you are interested in supporting me monetarily. I would so appreciate it. But yeah, other than that, guys, thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Good night.